What is going on, guys? This is Justin with Go Crazy Card Collecting. I'm having such a good time reading this book, Backroads and Ball Players by Jim Yeager, and just finding out so much about Arkansas history and the history of baseball through Arkansas. Arkansas is rich in the history of the major leagues and the history of baseball, and there are lots of players that made it to the majors from Arkansas. So I want to share a fantastic story today. Please stick with me. You're going to want to hear this whole story all the way through because it's unbelievable. It's really awesome. And about a guy named Gene Bearden. Now, Gene Bearden was a World Series hero for the last World Series that the Indians won in 1948. And I will get to that, but I need to backtrack to where he came from. In the early 1900s, there's a guy named Dr. Earl Williams, who, now I'm kind of going off the cuff here. I did a lot of reading and a lot of research, but if I get something wrong, I'm sorry. You fact check me, tell me I'm wrong, whatever, but I'm going to do the best I can. But anyway, Dr. Earl Williams started this. He was a semi-pro coach and started a semi-pro league called the Faulkner County League, which is the county that I live in. And he did this in Greenbrier, Arkansas, which is 10 miles from my house. And he trained all these baseball players and these pro baseball players, and several of them made it to the league. And one of them being his middle son, and all three of his sons played pro baseball, but his middle son made it to major leagues, played on the A's with Jimmy Fox, and he got 2 World Series checks and all this stuff. Anyway, I do have a card of him. His name's Boudreau Williams, Dr. Earl Williams. This is not my card, actually. This is a buddy of mine, Josh. Let me borrow this card for this video. I'm going to get this card. Look at that chaw right there in his mouth. But on the back, it actually says, hails from Greenbrier, Arkansas, which I said is a neighboring town of ours. And Dr. Williams started this school, and because he became so reputable through amateur baseball in Arkansas and getting these guys to pro baseball, that all these players started coming to the school. And in the first class of the school, actually, I found an article or man, I'm getting tongue-tied. I found an ad from a Sporting News of 1946 for that Greenbrier baseball school right here, which is pretty awesome. And I checked some things on the back. It talks about some guys back here, Frank Scaff, and I looked him up, and he played on the team that it talks about from 44 to 46, so it checks out for that time period. It says Greenbrier Baseball School, June 9th to July 20th. Approved under GI Bill of Rights, tuition $40, board and room $10 per week at private residences. Instructors Dr. E.T. Williams, Royce Williams, Gene Williams, Jimmy Lefty Lyon, and Otis Brandon, who actually made it to the majors as well. And he's an instructor at this time. For other information, it says right there. Anyway, I found an ad. This is a 1946 Sporting News ad for this Greenbrier baseball school. And this, and the card right here, this is his middle son, Boudreau. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to get me one of these. It talks about Greenbrier. It's pretty awesome. The first class has a guy in there named Gene Bearden. And let me tell you the story of Gene Bearden. This is a fantastic story. So Gene Bearden is trying to make his way into the majors. He's in the first class of this school, which was 1938. And in 1941 and 42, he gets to pitch a little bit, and he doesn't pitch well. And then he gets drafted. So he gets drafted into the military. And he's from Arkansas. He's an Arkansas kid. And Dr. Williams had kind of changed his game. He came as an infielder, I think. And Dr. Williams said, I want you to be a pitcher. And all of a sudden, he became the highlight of the school. And scouts were coming to see him. And he accepted, I think it was to the Philadelphia Phillies. He accepted an offer. And so went to play for the Phillies a little bit. And then he got drafted into the Navy. And he went into the Navy, and the story is he was on the Helena, which was a boat that survived Pearl Harbor. But he was on this boat off some islands, and the boat was attacked and hit by some torpedoes. And he was as he was on it, he got injured, ended up on a raft, and said 170 or so people died on this ship, and he was found on this raft, and he was rescued. Now his knee was messed up, like bad messed up, and he had a skull fracture. He had some issues with his skull, and so he ended up going to the hospital, and a surgeon was able to do some experimental surgery on him. He was in the hospital for 2 years. Unbelievable story. For 2 years, and they reconstructed his knee. They put some metal plate stuff in his head, all these things. And then he was able to make it and come back into the majors after 2 years. And during all this time, there is kind of a love story that goes on too. His high school sweetheart hears of his injury, finds him in the hospital, comes and visits him, and he helps him onto his road to recovery. And then he gets better and is able to resume pitching. And not only does he resume pitching, he comes in 1948 and is just like unbelievable. Makes it to Cleveland and is unbelievable for the Indians in 1948. He gets to the end of the season. He has 19 wins on the season. He's second in ERA in the league. And there is a playoff game for the pennant against them and the Boston Red Sox. And he gets to pitch this game, and he wins this game. And there's a picture of him being carried off the field after this game, after beating Boston. He's the hero of this game, and it sends him into the World Series. So that's his 20th win. He's like 20-7 at this point. Fantastic. I mean, one of the best seasons. He was at that point, he was better than Feller and Lemon. In fact, there's a quote. I think I've got it highlighted in this book. I do not have it highlighted in this book, so I will find it. Here it is. By Lou Boudreau. It says, Bearden was my best pitcher in 1948, better than Feller or Lemon. I had absolute confidence in him. So he was, you guys know who Feller is, you know who Lemon is, and he was better than both of them in the 1948 season, the last time the Indians won the World Series. So he goes on to pitch, I think, game 2 or game 3, wins that game, and then in game 6, he comes in at the end, and I can't remember if it was Feller or Lemon. I think it was Feller, who was struggling, and he comes in and saves it. He gives up a run that is not his fault, not his run. And anyway, he makes the last few outs. They win game 6. They win the World Series. That's the last time the Indians have won the World Series. They are now the longest drought in MLB of winning a World Series. And so he is a hero in more ways than one. He wins the American League Rookie of the Year, Sporting News Rookie of the Year. He has one of the most unbelievable seasons, and he goes on to play 7 more seasons and never has another winning season again. So it's just like this big, unbelievable thing. But the story is of him being on the Helena ship that the torpedoes hit and destroyed, and he survives, and they do all this reconstructive surgery back in the 40s, and he's in the hospital for 2 years. And so that story is in this book. And it talks about Gene Bearden throughout this book, and it tells the story of how throughout the rest of his life he was on pain medication and dealt with things, headaches and all this stuff his whole life. And so I don't know how you are. This is his rookie card, his 1949 Bowman rookie. Awesome card. I got a really good example of it. It even tells the story on the back. It says, badly wounded in torpedoing of the Helena. During war, doctors thought he might never walk again, much less pitch. However, last season, with world champion Indians, he won 20, lost 7, led the league in ERA with 2.43, and his won-loss percentage of .741 was second highest. His 20th win was a playoff game against Red Sox, which won the pennant for Cleveland, and he was the Indians' World Series hero. What a season. Crazy. This dude's from Arkansas. It says born Helena, Arkansas. Born in Helena, was on the Helena ship. That story, like I said, is in this book, and it tells about all that. It tells about his wife, and it tells about the love story, and it tells about him going through the Greenbrier baseball school and all these things. Unbelievable. So if you're like me, and I may be babbling and going all over the place, but if you're like me, I like get so into this stuff that I just start researching it all over the place. I read Wikipedia. I don't take it word for word, but I read it. And then I research the things I find in Wikipedia. And then it takes me down one rabbit hole, then another rabbit hole, then another rabbit hole. And in fact, the Baseball Research Project, SABR, said this about his backstory. There is a backstory with the Bearden saga. On the early morning of July 6, 1943, the cruiser USS Helena was in the Kula Gulf of the South Pacific near the Solomon Islands, where it was part of an American task force battling Japanese. The Helena was one of the lucky few ships in Pearl Harbor that had survived when the Japanese attacked on December 7th, 1941. The fighting was fierce in the Kula Gulf. Suddenly, the Helena was struck by 3 torpedoes. American destroyers darted in and out trying to save as many lives as possible. From time to time, they had to divert their rescue missions to one of battling the Japanese. Out of the crew of 900 on the Helena, 168 died as it sank. Machinist mate Gene Bearden was one of the survivors. His head had been badly smashed open, and one of his knees was a mass of wounded flesh drifting in a life raft. He was picked up by one of the destroyers for the next 2 years. He was in the hospital where a silver plate was inserted into his skull to fill up the part that had been gashed out, and a metal hinge was inserted into his damaged knee. Baseball at this point seemed out of the question for Bearden. His war injuries would plague him the balance of his life. He needed to take pain-killing drugs, and at times had difficulty seeing. So this is from the Gene Bearden SABR project, the Baseball Research, and so super reputable source. This story came from it. I was reading it in Wikipedia. At the very end of the Wikipedia article, it says, but it was all false. And I was like, what the heck? So I started researching more. I went back to the SABR project, and it doesn't say this anymore. It says that it was all a lie. It was all made up. The very next day after I do this. So this book does not mention that it was all false, okay? This was written in 2018, I think, and it was not mentioned in this book. The very next day, I subscribed to Jim Yeager's newsletter. He writes articles, and I subscribe to it, and he sends them, and they're awesome, fantastic. And the very next day, he puts out an article about this topic and about this story. And he says he's written over 200 stories about baseball players and researched 200 stories, and none have been as hard and as complicated as Gene Bearden's story. So after he wrote this article and after he had wrote in this book and done some other things, some people started contacting him. And well, Gene Bearden died in 2004. His wife died in 2006. They kept this story going their entire lives. Now, in the 70s and 80s, I think that he stopped kind of answering questions about it, but he never denied it. And a guy by the name of Hennessy, I don't know if I would find it quickly, what his actual name is. Guy by the name of Hennessy, Sean Hennessy, started to go back and research the medical or the military records of Gene Bearden, and found out that he was in Florida during that time. He wasn't on the Helena ever. And then found some pictures of him playing minor league ball during the time that he was supposed to be in the hospital. And so he was playing ball during that time, working his way through the minors. But yet, on his baseball card in 1949, it talks about the torpedoing of the Helena. And then on his next card, several of his cards, I've read that story on the back of these cards. I don't know why this happened. I don't know why he started telling this story. I don't know where it came from and how it blossomed to what it was. But there are articles, they're very, Jim Yeager did nothing. He did his due diligence. He did his research and used very reputable sources for this story that has been told the same way so many times. And this guy from Arkansas who went through this Greenbrier school, which is so close to my home, and was a World Series hero. There's no denying that. Like I said, Cleveland fans, you know who he is. Gene Bearden. There's so many pictures of him with Lemon and Feller and as the World Series hero and being carried off the field after that game to win the pennant and all, like a big time deal during that season. And for some reason made up this whole story about how he was in the hospital for 2 years, was on this ship, and it was torpedoed, and he had metal plates in his head. And his wife, they even visited his wife after his passing, and she kept up the story of him having to take painkillers and all these things. But the military records, and there's been proof that he was never on the Helena to begin with. Pretty wild. This story, I love baseball history, especially through this time in the 30s and 40s, and some of these characters, because they are, man, they're characters. Look at that dude. What a character. Pretty awesome. Boudreau, and I may talk about him later, but this one is about Gene Bearden. What an unbelievable story. I love it. I can't get enough of this kind of stuff, and I hope to be able to tell you some more. There's Preacher Rowe, Johnny Sane, they're all from Arkansas. Brooks Robinson he's not in this book. There's some other guys. There's a mentor of Preacher Rowe's that lived down the street from him that was a major league player that I'll talk about him too. Very, very cool. But anyway, Gene Bearden, look him up. Look up his story. Look up the things that he told and the way that he lived his life and how he kept it going forever. And get yourself a Gene Bearden card, because what an awesome card. Rookie of the Year. This is his rookie. 1948 Indians World Series hero. Last time they won the World Series. I don't know. The Bearden curse. You can get that one started, because he lied about the story that's on all his baseball cards. What an unbelievable thing. Okay, that's all I got for you guys. I know I repeated myself a while and I kind of blabbed on. I hope the story was fun for you. Pretty crazy. There's so much rich history in Arkansas. I hope to keep exploring it and peeling it peeling it open, peeling it off, peel off. Sure. Peeling it back. Hey, peeling it back. I hope that I can keep doing that. And also, I got some of these Mag Pros. They're pretty sweet. I'm going to definitely get some more of those. There's my 61 Mutual and a Mag Pro. I'm going to get some of these made, or make them myself, or figure that out. But I love these. It's going to change my collection, because I have so many cards that are not in anything. And with my limited budget, I just can't send them all off to get them graded. But I want them in these slabs. So this is thanks to Mangini and Redneck Collector Joe. You guys, I've seen you with them recently. I've seen a bunch of them before, but kind of just made me take the plunge and get a few of them. I love them. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about old Gene Bearden. His story, pretty unbelievable. Have a good one. Stay blessed.